let's get into Priscilla, the big in terms of wide release this week. So directed by Sofia Coppola. Priscilla is the story of teenage Priscilla. Oh, her maiden name. Do not know how to pronounce it. Priscilla Beaulieu. Priscilla Beaulieu, I think, meets Elvis Presley at a party. The man who is already a meteoric rock and roll superstar becomes someone entirely unexpected in private moments, a thrilling crush, an ally in loneliness, a vulnerable best friend. Starring Kaylee Spaney, Jacob Elordi. Obviously, we got Elvis last year from Baz Luhrmann, going over kind of the superstar side of Elvis and his relationship with his manager and his family. This is much more Priscilla's side of things. It starts off with her in Germany with her family, where her military family is stationed. And of course, we all know Elvis got drafted in the military, got stationed over there in Germany. That's when they ended up meeting over there in Germany when she was ninth grader. Their romance kind of starts. And then it just kind of keeps growing from there until they obviously get married. They have Lisa Marie Presley, their daughter, and they were married for, I think, like 11 years or maybe younger. But I think they had at least a 10-year relationship. I think they were married for at least like 6. And then, of course, they get divorced, and then Elvis passes. But yeah, Seth and I saw it. Seth, you saw it probably like 3 weeks ago now at this point. I think George also did see it, so I'll look up what his review was.
George did watch it because he was going to get tickets.
Oh, yeah. That was the one he wasn't able to get tickets for, but Sophie was able to get tickets for.
Yeah.
I feel like that story is too recurring. I feel like he scratches Sophie's back, and then we get so many of Sophie him saying like,
"Yeah,
Sophie got tickets to this, but not for me." So she's going. He'll be like, "Yeah, I'm bummed out. Me and Sophie tried, but we couldn't." And then like the next day, like, "Well, Sophie got it, but not me." But yeah, let's get into our review. I don't think there's going to be a ton to go into here, but I actually did quite enjoy this one. So, Seth, what are your kind of thoughts on Priscilla?
Yeah, so I watched this. It was like 9th or 10th of October, so it's like about 3 weeks ago, like you said. Yeah, I really liked it. I think Priscilla is a really interesting story, and it's like kind of a film that kind of maybe, in my eyes, was needed to be made after Baz Luhrmann's Elvis last year, regardless of what you think. It clearly glossed over Elvis as a character. I think Sofia Coppola, it's interesting enough that actually, like, this is pretty bad for me. It's actually my first ever film I watched from her. I haven't seen Miranda Out. I haven't seen Lost in Translation. I haven't seen Virgin Suicides. I haven't seen, like, there's 2 others. I can't remember the name. Maybe more. I don't know. But I think this accurately displayed the loss of innocence, the loss of Priscilla's innocence, the loss of a child's innocence, and the kind of grooming scenario we had going on. Visually, really, really great. I actually read I think it was like Doug's review the other day. I think he said it's like a pastel dream thing, which I think is like a recurring thing from what I know in her films. It has a very like bright lit, overlit, kind of pastel-like look, which I actually really liked. I think it works very much in the film with like kind of a contrast to her, especially in the earlier points of the film, her literally being a child, which I think was really interesting. I think that the first half was definitely better than the second. The second is a bit of a letdown due to some conversations I don't think were really delved into as much as they could be. Specific conversations with Priscilla and Elvis when they're in the bedroom and stuff like that, and it's kind of getting somewhere, then he kind of cuts off, and you're kind of feeling half-baked and lackluster. But I think the performances were really good. I really, really liked Kaylee Spaney?
Yeah, Kaylee Spaney, yeah.
She's definitely up there, one of my favorite performances of the year. I think she was fantastic. I think she was great. Weird how like young they made her look, and then like she gets older throughout the film. It's really well done. Do you know what I mean?
There was multiple. I knew they didn't change the actress who played her, but there's so many times that the film was like, you look completely different.
Crazy.
They did
just by crazy hair, makeup, so like clothes, really, really well done. So Jacob Elordi is an interesting one. I know some people didn't really like him, I know some people loved him. I really liked him. I really like Jacob Elordi. I think he kind of played like a more subtle, subdued Elvis that kind of showcased maybe a different character. And I don't think it's when I posted my initial review, I had a few like messages and comments saying like, whose Elvis is better, Austin Butler's, Jacob Elordi's? You can't compare them. They are so unbelievably different portrayals of Elvis as a character and a human being. But I really, really liked Jacob Elordi. I think he's a really, really great actor. And I think Kaylee Spaney was definitely like the top tier. I think she was fantastic. The best thing about the film. So I give it 3 out of 3.5. Could go up a rewatch. That's like a high 3.5 though, because I mentioned this. Like I watched this is just a weird comparison. I watched
You would know exactly what 3.5 it was if you had a scale out of 10 or 100.
shut up, boy. I watched Maestro.
I think both are acceptable
I think Maestro
pronunciations.
sounds bad. I watched Maestro on the same day, like just before it, and that was a 3. But then if I look at that being a 3 and a 3.5, I'm like, Maestro was like a 3. Maestro. Priscilla was like a high 3.5. Do you know what I mean? Like teetering on a 4. I really liked it. Yeah, good watch. Enjoyed it. A film that needed to be made, especially after Biden Suburban splashy as Elvis, but not one that is comparable, especially when it comes to Elvis as a character, because it's just so different. But yeah, I liked it. Good.
Right. Yeah, I'm similar to you in terms of I haven't my Sofia Coppola bag isn't very deep. It's one film deep, and that's Priscilla. So I haven't seen her other ones to compare, but I have heard the similar things to you that it's a common theme in hers to kind of have that kind of lush, dreamlike cinematography and story style to her films. And I totally felt that in this. It really feel like I don't know, like obviously A, I'm not a woman. B, I've never groomed anyone. C, I've never been groomed. But as someone who's never had experience in any of those 3 things, I really felt like I was like put in her shoes pretty well in terms of like what it feels like to be just like, you know, over the moon, like butterflies in your stomach, like, oh my God, this famous guy like likes me, like, and you're getting swept up in this romance and it feels so surreal. And like your life just gets changed like that. And it felt like just such like a dream throughout so much of this movie. And then it would just like quickly crack you over the head and be like, no, this is actually also like a nightmare too. But then it would kind of, again, I've never been like an abusive relationship, but a lot of stuff you'll hear from that is where like you'll think things are going so great and then things will go so terribly, but then like after that you're like, oh well, maybe they've changed because things are going well again, and be like everything kind of goes happy. Like I feel like it just did such a well thing at portraying that in terms of just she was just in this just trance-like, dream-like fairy tale that was just quickly, you'd just get these quick abrupt moments where it would be, you'd realize it's not as dreamlike as you might think it is with how the relationship played out. And obviously you kind of realize it was like a nightmare all along when you think about it, because obviously she was a 9th grader when they met and he clearly like groomed her. And that's like the thing about like grooming is like clearly he like, you know, because he was always keeping in contact with her. He was clearly like prepping her to be like, once you're of age, like we're going to get married or whatever. But like also because this is straight from like the words of Priscilla Presley, because it's like her book is what this movie's based off of, and she was very involved in the production. So like you'd have to imagine it's pretty accurate to what her life was. So, like kind of the way they portray it in the movie is like he never really does, like, you know, it's gross, but he never does like the crazy like things you might expect. But like he clearly is like grooming her, you know, because he's like from 90% of the early relationship, they're never, or like 99, they're never in the same country, because it's just like he's like writing her letters, like finish your schooling, like once you come, like basically they kind of like meet and have like a few dates, it seems like, from like the timeline in the movie, at least. I don't know if real life, but timeline in the movie is they meet, and when she's in 9th grade, they go on a few dates, and then he either got restationed or he just like his time in the army was done and he went back to America, and that was kind of it. They went like 3 years, maybe even more, without seeing each other again, until finally like he then flew her out to Graceland, Memphis, Tennessee. And then that's kind of where they rekindled. And that's at this point, she's like about to graduate high school. And props to her for like sticking with her parents' word and graduating high school, because I don't know how, like, because like people in high school knew like she was like with Elvis. Like, how do you, if you're with like the biggest superstar in America, like how can you actually just like go through like study? Like I know they kind of showed that she would cheat on all her tests to get by, but I would too. Like, how would you be able to focus on studies if you're with Elvis Presley and like a multimillionaire, the biggest superstar in the world? Like, why would you care about going to school? It's just crazy.
Do you think that this film did a good job in highlighting the stature of Elvis's fame and his like life? I know it's not directly related about him, but I think when you look at it through the eyes of Priscilla, when she is, you know, going to school and stuff, it's a difficult one. I think it's quite hard to portray in a film just how big Elvis was as a figure, especially in America, across the world.
Yeah, and I think it's also
Priscilla that would have been perhaps higher than portrayed. But again, this is a film that came from, you know, the horse's mouth in a way, from her book. So it's hard
it's like, and also I think it's the way it shows Elvis in this is kind of the way she viewed him, in terms of, I don't think she ever fully grasped how much of a star he was. Like obviously when they first started living together, she would just be playing with the dog in the yard, and then like the older people in Elvis's life were kind of like, you can't just be like out in the public eye, like playing in the yard. You can't be seen by paparazzi. And then she would kind of learn about everything from like newspaper headlines of like him on a film, getting close with the starlet on that film with him. But I feel like you didn't really grasp how big of a superstar Elvis was in this movie. And I feel like that was kind of intentional because I don't think it kind of shows like Priscilla didn't really fully understand the beast that was Elvis in more ways than one.
Yeah.
But I'm a huge Jacob Elordi fan. Like I love Jacob Elordi, and he's like, I'm excited to see more stuff from him. So I really, he was genuinely scary at points in this. Like he was so well at just being so unpredictable. Almost similar to like the same kind of presence De Niro had in Killers of the Flower Moon, where like most of the time he's not doing anything outright aggressive or terrible in front of your face, but there's always that uncomfortable undertones to everything he's doing where you're just uneasy about what he's doing.
Yeah.
But then there's times where he snaps and you're like, damn, that was like
out of nowhere. Like when he but he throws the chair for a chair.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just out of nowhere, just that kind of grasp of always wanting to be kind of in control of each situation. I think is the element you get from his personality.
Yeah, and always just so toxic. Anytime she'd be like, I don't want to do this, then his immediately answer would just be like, well, there's a billion women out there that would want to do this, so you better shape up or else I'll find someone else. And he's just like, I don't want a woman who's going to worry about a career. Like I want someone who's going to worry about me, and that's all I care about. And clearly he didn't want a woman in his life. He wanted like basically, a robot, basically just like someone who would do exactly what he said, dress exactly the way he wanted, always look a certain way, be there for him when he wants, but not be there for him when he doesn't want him.
Yeah.
Raise a kid, like just kind of just be, just doing their own thing and just not really be a part of his life other than just kind of doing, I don't know, just a weird relationship for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. What did you score it, by the way?
I gave it a 4-star.
Like a high, okay.
I gave it a 7.5 out of 10 purely because like I'm only put the decimals just because I don't want to spoil a surprise till Monday, but I don't know if there's a high 4, low 4, like I just threw a decimal on there just so people would know. But I don't know. Like I think I agree with you. The end wasn't as great for me as the rest of it, but because there was genuinely times throughout this where I was like, this could be like a 4.5. Like I really thought the direction was just primo, like which is why I really want to dive into more Sofia Coppola movies, because I thought the direction was just superb in this.
Yeah, I did. I really like visually. I think it was really, really interesting. Some of the shots were really, really great. The colors we utilized really well.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that's been very apparent in Sofia Coppola's career, apparently. Anyway, like people say the same about Lost in Translation. Marie Antoinette was massive with the hues of color, apparently. So I really do need to get into her films. I think I'd like judging from anyway, because I think they're all similar-ish, regarding visually. Anyway,
yeah, and the hair and makeup and costume design in this movie was incredible too. Like we said, like Kaylee Spaney literally transforms, like from her high school years to her Elvis years to like when she's kind of realizing like she wants a divorce from Elvis. She's her own person.
Like the age that she's portrayed.
Right. It's crazy how they're able to pull that off, because it goes over like a 10-year period at least. And
it's crazy.
Because like you feel so uncomfortable during like the groomer years when you're like, ew, she's like literally like a kid. But then by the time she like divorces Elvis, like she looks like a 30-year-old woman. And I'm like obviously this was filmed like 4 months later. And it's not like the classic way of like, oh, they just like add wrinkles to her face. Like, no, like just like transform the way she looks.
It's just like makeup, hair, clothes, and it changes. Like,
very impressive.
It's really, really great. Yeah, that was. I think she was probably my favorite thing. With Sofia Coppola's performance, my favorite thing about the film, I would say. Definitely.
Agreed. And like I said, I'm a huge Jacob Elordi guy. We can't really compare the Austin Butler to Jacob Elordi performance. I don't love Austin Butler or hate Austin Butler. I'm just kind of like whatever. Like he's just like a person. Whereas like I love Jacob Elordi. So that being said, like I'd be biased towards Jacob Elordi, but I would say like because like people are inevitably going to compare the performances. I've seen a lot of people dunking on Austin Butler, being like Jacob Elordi didn't have to do all that nonsense for his role, but it's like
different.
Austin Butler like was Elvis to me, like in that movie, like he became Elvis. Jacob Elordi for this, like when you watch this movie, he does great, and I love Jacob Elordi, like I said, so I'd be biased towards him. But like this is like you can clearly see why Austin Butler would probably have to go through a lot more prep for his role.
Elordi isn't the centerpiece. He's not the focus here. The focus is Priscilla, whereas Austin Butler was the dazzling showman Elvis, where he had to portray
Mm-hmm.
Elvis for a nearly 3-hour film, and it was all on him. So it's completely different.
Right.
I thought Austin Butler was great. I saw him as Elvis, and I see
Right.
Jacob Elordi as Elvis, just as different sides of him, and from a different perspective. I think it's the main.
Mhm.
thing. I mean,
Yeah, but I agree with you when you said this is kind of a movie that had to be made coming off of Baz Luhrmann's Elvis. But with that being said, like I'm not downplaying Baz. I think there's a place for both of them for sure.
there's a
because,
place for both. Absolutely.
Yeah, Elvis was such a polarizing figure, or not polarizing because I mean he's polarizing now, but obviously at the time, like no one, like let's just be honest, no one really gave a shit about this stuff at the time. But he was such a larger than life figure that I do think there's a place to have like a movie like where it kind of. Because like we mentioned, you don't really grasp in this movie how larger than life and crazy he was, which was intentional. But I feel like there's a place for a movie that shows that because Elvis from Baz Luhrmann really showed how like women literally would like faint over the dude, which like my grandparents were like huge. Like my grandma was a huge Elvis person. Like, yeah, very much like she, even to the day she died, like her house had, not exaggerating, like 4 dozen just pictures of Elvis, like Elvis memorabilia. Like he was just like
a lot of
like, and that's not uncommon. Like there's people that were just like obsessed with the guy to a point where we haven't really seen before. So Priscilla's 4-star for me, 3.5 from Seth. Yeah, like I said, I thought George did see it, but that was the one he wasn't able to get tickets to. But I like this. I didn't expect to not like this, but I expected to kind of be like, oh, that was like a good movie, but I liked it a lot more than I thought. Again, Sofia Coppola's direction was like a massive standout for me, and it's really going to not force me like in a bad way, but like I really do want to start watching more of her films now. I don't know about Kaylee Spaney, I want to see what you got, what you're doing next, because very impressive.
This film, not to compare it to Maestro again, just because I watched it back to forth. Maestro was like 15 minutes longer, but this film felt like 2 hours shorter. It's weird.
Yeah,
like I think this film flew by when I watched it. I don't know why. Like I need to watch it again, I think, because I think I might watch it. Like when I'm thinking about it now, I feel like I like it more than a 3.5. Do you know what I mean? I feel like I might just give it another watch. I think it's going to age really well over time.
I think so too, because like I said, there's a lot of moments during this where I thought it could be a 4.5. I do wish, the only thing I wish is that, and I know it's like such a trope to do in biopics, is to have like the end be like what happened next. But Priscilla was such a shadow of Elvis's career and life that I truly have no idea what she did do the rest of her life. And maybe that's intentional, that she didn't want to be in the public spotlight or have anything about her life known. But I do know that, because I was like looking up stuff after this, like how the relationship kind of go. I do know that she does want to be buried by Elvis when she dies. Like they have a plot next to each other. So like there's not a lot of hostility there. She still has a lot of love and admiration and respect for him. So I did kind of want to know like what kind of went on, because obviously she was like 23 or something when they divorced, and she's like, I don't know, in her 60s, 70s, 80s now. So like
23 with like 30 years of life experience already.
Yeah, like a lot of life has happened. So I kind of wanted to know, like, what did she go on to do? But she lived her own life. So good for her. Got out of the relationship. Jacob Elordi, solid performance. Glad he didn't have to transform his body and get super fat in the later years for Elvis. They just kind of played that off. Like Austin Butler, I don't know if he actually got fat, if it was just a pure fat suit, but seems like something he might have done.
We don't even have a release date yet, in the UK.
For what? Oh, because it was a film festival you saw.
I think it'll be like 7 months.
Yeah, it is A24, so it's going to be
that's the issue,
a while from now.
Yeah.
But yeah, also like it was just funny because there's only 3 other people in my theater, and it was like in the big theater at my theater I was showing. There's only 3 other people. I went at like noon yesterday though, on a weekday, so like not surprised that there wasn't that many people.